Do you wonder why your chord progressions maybe don't sound like the ones from the artists that you like to listen to? Then you are in the exact right place, because today I will show you some techniques to build chord structures that will let you melt inside. Now, a lot of people have been asking me to do this video, and I really went behind the books to find out the best way to teach you how I actually do my chords. So today I will show you how I got from this chord progression to this more advanced chord progression. Also, if you don't know anything about music theory, that's no problem at all. We will cover everything that you will need in this video right here. So let's start with the basics before we dive into chord structures. In the Western music scale, there are 12 different notes, here visualized on a piano keyboard. There's a pattern of 2 black keys, followed by a pattern of 3 black keys. And this pattern basically just repeats all over the whole keyboard. Now the white key here below the pair of 2 black keys is a C. And if we move up now 12 half tones, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, we reach another C. And this is an octave. An octave is an interval, and this describes the distance between 2 notes. Now the smallest step between 2 notes is a half tone or a whole tone. So a half tone is only 1 note above, and a full tone or a whole tone is always 2 notes above. So this is important to remember for later. Half tone, 1 note, whole tone, 2 notes. Now every song is written in a scale. A scale is a set of notes that form a particular harmony. Maybe you remember, for example, the Do, Re, Mi, Fa, Sol, La, Ti, Do back from school. Now, for example, the scale of C major would be C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, right? So just starting from C, which is the root note, and then we have this major scale, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. Now there are 2 main types of scales. There's the major scale, which is often described as happy or joyful, and the minor scale, which is more on the sad side of things. Now, if we look at this C major scale, and we remember what I just told you about the whole tone and the half tone, this major scale can be described with the following pattern. We start on the C, then we move up a whole tone, half tone, whole tone, whole tone, whole tone, half tone. And with this pattern, you can build any major scale, wherever you are on the keyboard. Let's say, for example, you want to build a E major scale. You again start on the scale of E, and then we just move up the same pattern, basically. So it's whole tone, half tone, whole tone, half tone. Now there are also minor scales, and a minor scale can be described with the following pattern. We again start on the C. Now we move with the following pattern. Whole tone, half tone, whole tone, half tone, whole tone, whole tone. This is a C minor scale. Now there are actually 3 different types of minor scales. The one that I just showed you is the natural minor scale. Next we have the harmonic minor scale, which is built out of the following pattern. It's again C, whole tone, half tone, half tone, 3 half tones, and another half tone. And last but not least, we have the melodic minor scale, which is built out of the following pattern. Whole tone, half tone, whole tone, half tone. So in all of these 3 different minor scales, it's just the end that is slightly different. I personally really like the harmonic minor scale. I don't know why, but it just has some kind of tension, and also it's a little bit less sad, so I personally really like this one. Now enough with the basics, let's start building chords. I will switch now inside of Ableton Live. This is where I build my chords, and it's just a nice way to visualize this and show you how the different notes are stacked on top of each other. To build a C major chord, for example, we need a root note. This would be the C. And now we add a major third, which is 4 half tones above the root note, and add a perfect 5th, which is 7 half tones above the root note. So this would be a C major chord. Now let's transpose this 1 octave down, because it's a bit high for my taste. To do that, in Ableton, you just hold the Shift key and then press the arrow down. So this is the same chord, just one octave below. Now to build a minor chord, we do the same. So let's duplicate this one. Just Command D on Mac. And now we have to shift this E here to a minor third. So a minor third is only 3 half tones above the root note. So it would be the root note, minor third, and again the perfect fifth. So this would be a C minor chord. So this is C major and C minor. These are both triads, so they are just compiled of 3 different notes. So when I start building chord progressions, I really just start with a chord at the beginning, and that will also be the key of which my song is in. Now I don't want to have my song in C major, so let's switch that up. So let's start building this song in F minor. Now I'm just gonna start building this chord progression as I would normally and just comment every step that I'm doing so you can really just follow along what my thoughts are behind this process. A nice way to start out a chord progression is to have 4 chords. That's a very simple chord progression, but you can build on top of that. So how would you build these 4 chords? One very simple way is to start with the end in mind, and that would be to draw in the chord of the last one, of the last chord, because we would have here these 1, 2, 3, 4 chords, right? And the last chord is very important because from the last chord you have to get back to the first chord in order to loop it. Let's build a C. Let's try out a major chord actually. And as you already can hear maybe that this chord resolves very nicely into this chord. So now we already have built 2 chords and we can just fill in the gap between these 2 chords. And we already know that this chord progression will function because we have these 2 chords that are fitting together and we can loop this whole thing, right? So let's start building something in between. Let's now continue with like that's already a very simple chord progression. And how this could be described as is we start out with our root chord. So it's in the first position basically. Then we switch over to the 4th step, because this root note here is on the 4th step of our scale basically. Then we go down to this G sharp, which is on the 3rd of our scale, and then we go up on the 5th. So this chord progression could be called a 1, 4, 3, 5 progression. And this chord progression already sounds very nice, right? Now a next step that I always like to do is to invert chords. Because what's the problem now with this chord progression for me is that these steps in between the chords, they're quite large. Because here we move from a C to a F, and this whole chord is just too far away from the chord that we came out of. And this creates this gap feeling. And I want to reduce that a little bit, so we can also invert chords. This chord here is now in the root structure. And we can do an inversion. So we just take the root note and we put it up 1 octave above. So again, to do that, we press Shift and arrow up. And now we have the first inversion of this F minor chord. We can also do a second inversion. To do that, we have to take this perfect 5th, so this G sharp, and just put it 1 octave above as well. So this would be the second inversion of the same chord. But let's just try now the first inversion, because this F here will rest on the same note even in the next chord. And this just gives this feeling of gluing together these chords, what makes them more flowing basically. And let's also invert this chord here, and let's actually do a different inversion this time. Let's do this type of inversion. because I can see that these two notes are now very close to each other, and which again functions as this kind of gluing together of the chords. So this was the chord in the beginning. And it sounds now like this. For my taste, this is already like one level up, right? It's already like, oh yeah, you change this chord progression and you don't play everything in the root position. Until now, we only built triads, so we only worked with 3 different notes on every chord. But a really nice way is to start now taking a 4th note. And after that, we are talking about tetrachords. So a tetrachord is just built out of 4 different notes. Now, a very easy way to do this is you can, for example, just take the same note and just put it 1 octave above, like basically duplicate it. So we could take this G sharp and duplicate it on this key right here. This would be a nice way, for example, to build like a first tetrachord. It just already sounds much more fuller. But what I really like to do is also just switch up the position of this 4th note. Because what's actually really nice about these triplets is that it gives us a solid foundation, and it just gives us a flexibility to add a 4th note without distracting the chord progression too much. So now let's just try out something. I'm just gonna draw in the note and see how it sounds like. Let's actually do it like this, as I told you before. Let's do it like this. And then only add a 4th note that's in another place on the 2nd chord. I love how that sounds like. This G right here on this A sharp minor chord, is it? Yeah, it's an A sharp minor chord with this added G. So this chord would be A sharp add 6, because it's the 6th step that gets added to this chord. In order to do that yourself, don't get stuck on the theory, because this is also really not important for me. The most important thing is that you really feel it. And it's nice to know some basics, but after that, just try to experiment and don't limit yourself, right? So now let's find another note that would fit into here. It just goes up too far here, but actually really like how that sounds like. So I'm just gonna add that A sharp. Now we only have these 4 chords, right? But in order to make it a bit more interesting, we can duplicate this chord progression. So let's do that. Let's duplicate it. And then on the 2nd half, we just start to mix up some things. So let's consolidate that together. So it's just one big MIDI clip. So now we created this 8-bar loop in order to change some things that make it less repetitive. Because if you only work with 4 chords, you're very limited to this 4-bar loop, right? So from here, I want to go into this chord, but I want to change up this chord a bit because this feels a bit repetitive for me. Well, I like that. I like this change from here. It's like kind of a hopeful chord progression for me. I don't know how it is called, but this sounds and feels really good to me. This is now again the same like this, but I'm just trying to find something here that is not this what is it, a D sharp major. I want to change this a bit so it's really more different than this here. This sounds nice, but then we have the same chord here. But I've got an idea. Maybe I can change this up and leave this one as it is now. Yeah, this one is it. Nah, it's not what I was looking for actually. Now let's also do that. It doesn't really have to mean that we always have to keep our chords in the same tempo and in the same rhythm. I want to also change that up a bit so we have a little bit more change in rhythms. That's what I actually also really like to do, is just like put in chords that are just a bit shorter. And these chords, like these chords in between two chords, they function as like a transition chord for me. Let's duplicate it, and then shorten this one here. Let's take this one and move it also here, but only very short. I don't feel this one that much yet. I think I have to change that up a bit more. Now, another thing that it's really nice if you can add one note that can go through the whole chord progression. I like that. The C works really nice here. Let's also try to make this one like faster. And now let's add a bass note to every chord. Let's do that again like this, just full notes. I don't like this when it goes through the whole time. I really like this chord here. I think this makes this whole chord progression like really worth it, because this just brings this like really bright chord in it, and just like it brings this hopeful feeling into it. And this is exactly what I'm always looking for when I do chord progressions, like this feeling of like this bit of surprise, and at the same time it's like, oh, all right, well, what's happening? What's happening? Like, this is what I love when I do chord progression. Now let's try something to really end this up, to really show you what you can do out of this chord progression. So let's add another MIDI track. And now let's drag this whole chord progression down. And here, let's delete this Bordun tone again. And now let's add a arpeggiator to it, to this MIDI track. And add another instrument, like let's just add the analog to it. It's just like a standard synthesizer inside of Ableton. Put it to 16th notes. And now let's even add a third MIDI track and just take the bass notes that I've drawn here. Let's copy that into a MIDI track right here. Let's make a new MIDI clip and just put them inside of here. And now let's add another analog. I really like the synthesizer analog. Like I work with that a lot. I think you can get really nice sounds out of it. And if you want to dive more deeply into that, I've made a video about this. So just click the link right here to learn more about the analog synthesizer. That sounds already really nice to me, and I think you could make a song out of that, right? So if you liked this video, please subscribe to my channel so you will receive further videos in the future like this one. And also just one thing that I want to say is that just put in a little bit more time than you think is necessary when you do chord structures and chord progressions. And I think it's really worth it because if you really are looking for these special chords that are surprising you, I think it can really take your songs onto another level. And if you want to learn how to create melodies on top of chord structures, just click this video right here. Alright, thanks for watching.